Okay, slapped, punched, kicked, choked, grabbed by the neck, thrown to the floor, tackled into furniture. Gilm punched and tackled into furniture. Mark Yeager punched. Mark Ingberg tackled into furniture. Ray Midoff punched. Norman Starkey slapped multiple times, punched multiple times, kicked multiple times, thrown to the floor multiple times, and tackled into furniture multiple times. Wendell Reynolds tackled into furniture, and the one person who was attacked more than any of them, and more viciously than any of them, by Marty Rathbun, and more frequently over a longer period of time than by any of them, was Mike Rinder, who was slapped, punched, kicked, choked, grabbed by the neck, thrown to the floor, and tackled into furniture. We're talking about 50 instances of violence on 22 people. Only reason I'm using those numbers is that those are all where the person themselves can state that it occurred, and there were witnesses to it, multiple witnesses. Okay, and that is why I bring it up. The point is that if you want to get into why and how and so on and so forth, sure, we can get into the time track and we can get into all of this. I'm saying, here's the thing. If you came to me and said, we were talking to Marty Rathbun and he's left the church and he's talking about some of his disagreements and so on and so forth, and he never brought up anything about physical violence, I never said anything about David Miscavige beating this person, that person, whatever, I wouldn't bring it up. I wouldn't. Even though I knew it would annihilate his credibility, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. But he's the one who's saying that David Miscavige beat these people, and he's saying that David Miscavige beat the exact same people that he beat. And that's what pisses me off. Because this guy is a fucking lunatic, and I don't have to explain how or why he became one, or how it was allowable. The fact is he's saying David Miscavige did what he did. Not once, not twice, but 50 times to 22 people where the people are still around, and they can attest to it, and there are witnesses to it. And the instances that you're saying that Mr. Miscavige engaged in aren't that way. And you're saying 75 to 100, but it isn't true. And now I'm getting a little angry. Am I angry at you? Not necessarily, but I'm goddamn pissed at Marty Rathbun because he knows that he was the reign of terror, the whole track prison warden, and the lunatic because he admitted to it. He admitted to it, and he knew, and it was part of his downfall. He's a bastard, and a coward, and a psychotic.
Talk to us about some of the violence. What kinds of incidents did you see?
Regularly, David Miscavige would, in the middle of a conference, in a conference room full of people at the base, physically assault and punch, slap open-handed, grab by the neck, throw to the floor, a number of international executives. I mean, almost the very highest part of the Church of Scientology international hierarchy, from the WDC chairman, which is the highest post within CSI, which was Mark Yeager. He got beat on in the 2000s. I probably saw him get beat up pretty severely half a dozen to a dozen times. Mark Ingber, who also held that post but was more often on the Watchdog Committee member for finance, which was the highest financial person within the ecclesiastical hierarchy, I saw him slap him around, beat him up on a number of occasions. Ray Midoff, who was a senior CS International, the highest technical person in the technical hierarchy of the Church of Scientology, he would regularly hit this guy open-handed upside the head real hard and jar him, or grab him by the neck and throw him on the floor. And Mike Rinder, who was the WDC member for OSA, Office of Special Affairs, which handled all external facing affairs, probably got it worse than anybody else. I saw him get beat up at least a dozen times just in those last 4 years or so that I was in, and some of them were pretty gruesome.
Now, Mike Rinder, many of the public will recognize him. He is the face of Scientology. You see him on CNN and other networks taking Scientology's position on different issues. Is that correct?
Yes, for probably a 10-15 year period, he was the face of Scientology to the general public.
Mm-hmm. And you say he was beaten. He was a favorite target of Mr. Miscavige?
Yeah, he was the most regular. I mean, I saw Tom DeVocht, who was Mr. Clearwater, basically. He was the commanding officer of the Commodore's Messenger Organization, Clearwater, for a number of years in the 90s and into the 2000s. I mean, he was the glue that kept the whole operation together. He oversaw all the buildings and all that. I saw him get beat up a couple of times. In fact, the second time I saw it happen, it was in front of a number of people, and it was the thing that sickened me so much that it prompted me to get on my motorcycle and get out of there, because it was so gruesome, and I liked Tom so much that I was afraid I was going to do something I would really regret in retaliation for it, so I removed myself from the scene. And that was the day I literally got on my motorcycle and headed down the road.
I first started in Scientology in May 1978, my first course. I remember writing on my check sheet, May 1978, I was 14 years old.
Okay. And then you became a member of the staff and then Sea Org?
Yes, I first started on staff at the Bellevue Mission up next to Seattle, Washington. And so I was staffed there for a little bit. And then shortly after my 16th birthday, I joined the Sea Organization, 31 October 1979.
Why did you leave?
There's somebody in charge of the Church of Scientology right now named David Miscavige, who is an extremely abusive, tyrannical leader who is turning the Church of Scientology, or has turned the Church of Scientology, into what I classify as a cult, and something that I didn't want to have anything more to do with because he's hurting people. And the things that I have observed over time while I was in the executive positions was so far from what I ever envisioned Scientology to be and the world that we wanted to create. We were there to fight for human rights and everything like that, and I mean, we got the worst human rights violations happening right under our nose. I could not rationalize it anymore.
You say you witnessed David Miscavige physically attacking Mike Rinder in the same room?
Yeah, just over, like probably 3 feet past where I just described that occur on a different day. I think that was 2002. I think I took note of Mike Rinder. Yeah, no, 2000. It was 2000. And what happened was he came up the ramp and straight over to Mike's desk. Mike had his back facing out because his desk was facing the wall when you would come in. So he didn't expect it at all, because he just came around the corner and then grabbed Mike around the neck and was holding him around the neck and choking him. And, you know, his chair is all turning around and stuff like that, and he's like, what the hell? And his face is all turning purple, and he's like just really mad. Who knows what it was about, what prompted it? Who knows? You can never figure out from 1 second to the next what the guy was going to do or how he was going to react. And I've got a zillion examples of that. But however, that's what he did with Mike, and knocked him down. Like once he was done strangling him, he brought him down in the chair onto the ground and toppled over.
Are there any other of these attacks of note that you want to share with us?
One of them was to Ray Midoff. It was the first one that I observed, so it had some impact on me personally. We were up in the RTC conference room. That one was in 1995. And it was Guillaume Lesevre, Ronnie Miscavige, which is David Miscavige's brother, myself, and I believe Mark Ingber, and I don't know who else, but we were called up because he was in the middle of some sort of meeting that he was having with Ray Midoff, which wasn't going well. And he called us to come up to the conference room. And we came in, and I was kind of also being the deputy commanding officer of CMOINT at that time, because we were in the middle of a few things, and I held several sectors at that point. So that's why I was there. And he did, Ray Midoff was sitting at the conference room table. I showed you a picture of that table. He was sitting at the table, kind of like at attention, like this, and as David was ranting and raving about something that he had done. And while I was there and observed it, and those other people observed it too, he came over and with an open hand hit him across the head 3 times, like,